Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the progress I've done on my nonfiction book, The Cost of Freedom, Anti-Intellectualism, and the American Identity. Please do not look at the chapters of the first ever post I made for this book because the chapters there are not accurate. These are the ones that I'm actually going to follow in my project. Chapter 1 explores the Puritan origins of anti-intellectualism and religious freedom in America. I talk about how the Puritans only believed in basic and practical education and believed that excessive intellectualism and speculation could lead people away from God. Chapter 2 is about the First Great Awakening of the 1730s and the 1740s. Like the Puritans, these people believed that individual and hence quote unquote free interpretation of scripture and personal experience were more important than a religious hierarchy and formal education. Chapter 3 explores anti-intellectualism and freedom during the American Revolution. I talk about how some of the founding fathers, like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, valued scientific inquiry and education. However, many groups viewed educated elites as potential tyrants, such as the Sons of Liberty. Chapter 4 is about the Jacksonian era and the rise of populism. I will also talk about the Second Great Awakening. Like the First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening emphasizes emotional and intuitive religious experiences over theological knowledge and education. This contributed to the broader American idea that people have the freedom and the quote unquote right to prioritize emotions and tradition over intellectual pursuits. Chapter 5 is about anti-intellectualism during the Civil War and Reconstruction. I will talk about how the southern states were more likely to employ anti-intellectualism to appeal to their masses, but both sides used it, just like how Democrats and Republicans both use anti-intellectualism to appeal to their masses. Although, Republicans are more likely to do it. Chapter 6 is about religion and politics in the Gilded Age. I will talk about the Third Great Awakening, which, like the other Great Awakenings, focused on personal salvation and emotionalism. I also talked about how they doubted scientific progress. Chapter 7 is about anti-intellectualism in the 20th century. This will be one of the longest chapters and covers a vast array of subjects, including McCarthyism, fundamentalist evangelical Christianity, consumer culture, and political campaigns. Chapter 8 is about the paradox of freedom and anti-intellectualism in 21st century America. In Chapter 8, I will start by talking about George W. Bush's presidency, which was widely criticized as being anti-intellectual. Many people criticized him for his poor grammar and inarticulate speaking style. He also, like many people before him, promoted a down-to-earth image, like Reagan. Like Ronald Reagan, he also saw America as the quote-unquote the city on the shining hill, which is actually taken from the Puritans. This actually came from a sermon given by the Puritan leader John Winthrop in 1630. So even from the very beginning of American history, we already see the idea that America is exceptional and is supposed to be, this shining beacon of freedom that, where people can be free to do whatever they want. And, this has been reiterated throughout history and even now. When Obama came into power in 2008, conservatives criticized him for being elitist because he was too, I guess you could say, nuanced, while people like George Bush and Ronald Reagan had a very black and white view of the world, which is also tied into, this rigid, masculine way of seeing things as black and white. We Americans are the good guys, we patriots, and these godless communists are evil. So, as we know, a lot of conservatives did not like Obama, and there were many conspiracy theories about him. And enter Trump in 2015. As an outsider to the political sphere, Trump portrayed himself as the champion of the common man, just like Reagan and Bush, against the so-called quote-unquote swamp and establishment. He also portrayed himself as pro-freedom. He always talked about safeguarding American values and freedom, especially when it came to free speech and the Second Amendment. And, also the evangelicals saw him as a defender of their faith, even though he is, quote unquote, a baby Christian, as one evangelical pastor put it. they saw Trump on the same side as themselves. Trump also frequently suggested that mainstream media were biased against him and fake news. This encouraged many conservatives to believe in alternative, often unsubstantiated sources of information and news, which led to a proliferation of conspiracy theories in the 2020s, such as the one starting with a Q and COVID denial. I will also examine into anti-intellectualism after Trump's presidency, including the quote unquote war on woke that we see as personified by Ron DeSantis, Tucker Carlson in the Daily Wire, and many other conservatives. Finally, Chapter 9 talks about how other countries can learn from America's mistakes and avoid political polarization. I will talk more about Chapter 9 in the future.